Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. I have the pleasure of introducing our luncheon keynote speaker, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Secretary Julian Castro. This year, as HUD celebrates its 50th anniversary, Secretary Castro has been focused on advancing policies that create opportunities for individuals around the country. These opportunities include promoting home ownership, supporting community development, strengthening all communities in this century of cities, enhancing community resiliency, and increasing access to affordable housing. All goals that are very dear to our heart as planners. Secretary Castro has a first-hand understanding about planning and the needs of cities from his work as the mayor of San Antonio, Texas. During his mayoral tenure, he became known as a national leader in urban development. I am certain Secretary Castro will go into greater detail, so without further delay, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Secretary Castro.
Good afternoon. Well, thank you so much, Bill, for that introduction, and more importantly, for the fantastic work that you and the APA do every day. I want to thank the membership of the American Planning Association for your warm welcome. It's great to see, they tell me, 1,600 folks in the room. You know, I've been to Seattle about 4 or 5 times in my life, and it has never rained while I've been here. I'd like to take a little bit of credit for that, but I have a feeling I can't. HUD is proud to be your partner, and I'm honored to speak with you today, especially during such a fantastic portion of the conference. As you know, the awards luncheon is a chance to celebrate exceptional design and to recognize the visionaries behind that great work. Thoughtful, creative planning has always been essential to community development. Centuries ago, Roman engineers designed roads that could withstand flooding. At the turn of the 20th century, Daniel Burnham's visions in steel and stone remade Chicago. Generation after generation, planners and architects have been as essential to the growth and the prosperity of cities as the people themselves. It's true, though, that planners aren't always out front and center, and your long days and even longer nights sometimes in front of community boards, neighborhood meetings, and commissions don't generate splashy headlines most of the time. But your contributions are felt. And even if they don't always know who they ought to thank, you're appreciated by Americans from all walks of life. Your skill and your insight have also never been as important to the future of our communities and our nation as they are today. You see, we're living in a century of cities, a time when people all over the world, some with little more than their dreams and determination, are flocking to urban centers. It's happening in Africa and Asia, and it's happening in Latin America. It's also happening here at home, where Americans are falling in love with cities again. In fact, the Census Bureau estimates that by 2050, 75% of our nation's population growth will happen in cities. That's 60 million new people in our nation. So the question isn't, how do we help cities grow? Cities are growing whether we like it or not. Rather, the questions that we need to ask are, how do we help cities to thrive? How do we equip people who live in these cities, the people who will transform schoolhouses into places of learning, factories and universities into places of innovation, and neighborhoods into places of opportunity? How do we equip them for success? And I don't just mean career success, because, as you know, good, inclusive planning is about much more than that. It's also about creating vibrant, sustainable communities that give everyone a fair shot at pursuing their dreams. It's about possibility and about hope. So the fundamental question that we have to ask truly is, how do we help our fellow citizens in this new century make not just a living, but a life? I'm convinced that answering that question begins with a commitment to collaboration, a commitment to ensuring that every voice is heard and that the needs of every community are considered in our planning decisions. As Jane Jacobs once wrote, cities have the capability of providing something for everybody only because and only when they are created by everybody. That's what's needed for success in this century of cities, an understanding that we're all connected and that collaborative planning is smart planning. Just look at what they've done in communities like Denver, Colorado. Back in the 1980s, the Denver metropolitan economy was struggling. The downtown district was disconnected from the surrounding counties, and everyone, urban and suburban families, was hurting as a result of that. Fortunately, the folks in Colorado realized that their communities were all connected, and they developed a unified planning vision. They figured out that they could make smarter investments that would benefit everyone. So Denver and its surrounding counties invested in Denver's downtown. They fostered a vibrant urban core, a core that then boosted the rest of the region. Today, HUD is proud of the work that Denver has done and proud to build on that work as part of our Sustainable Communities Initiative grant. We're working with local officials and with the U.S. Department of Transportation to expand permanent affordable housing, to improve access to jobs, and enhance connectivity along Denver's many transit corridors. That includes the development of more than 120 miles of light rail, which will help transform Denver's west side into the livable, transit-oriented neighborhoods that we know make so much sense today. It's this kind of collaboration that is at the heart of what Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper has said communities in the 21st century need in order to collaborate to compete. That communities need to collaborate to compete. HUD is committed to helping communities across the United States do just that, collaborate to compete. And today, I want to share with you our approach. I'm convinced that in order to thrive in this century of cities, communities need to get at least 3 basic things right. First, they have to get the basics of governance right. They must ensure that residents have clean water, that electricity and transportation are reliable and available to everyone, that neighborhoods are safe, and that housing is free from discrimination, and that housing is affordable to families and individuals up and down the income scale. And I want to emphasize this last point. Too often when we think about the basics, we overlook things like housing affordability. But being able to secure a good home without spending so much of your income that you can't afford to invest in your child's education or ensure that your child has enrichment opportunities like sports or music, to a parent, there is nothing more basic than that. That's why HUD is making each of those basics a cornerstone of our local and regional partnerships. That includes our work in communities like Brooklyn's East New York, where we're hoping to transform vacant or underutilized sites along key transit corridors into thousands of new mixed-income housing units, projects that we know will also create jobs for local residents. In Chicago, we've joined forces with the nonprofit Preservation of Affordable Housing, the University of Chicago, and the city to revitalize Chicago's Woodlawn neighborhood. Together, we're renovating more than 500 affordable housing units, while also creating another 500 market rate units and boosting public safety. In fact, for its part, the University of Chicago has agreed to place its public safety officers at key locations along school routes to help keep the children who live in nearby public housing safe. I have to say that all of us in this room would agree that no child should ever have to risk his or her safety in order to get a good education. And I'm proud that the University of Chicago has made the community's children their children in that city. This is what's possible when everyone is brought to the table, when everyone's voices and concerns are heard, when we plan together and we partner together. That's when all of us can prosper together. The second key to success is that cities must create a vibrant, compelling quality of life, one where folks want to live, to work, and to visit. That means investing in public transit and affordable and accessible transit. It means creating great parks and public spaces, investing in the arts, pairing preservation with new retail and commercial development. And it means, of course, as you as planners know very well, fostering walkable neighborhoods. Shortly after I was elected a few years ago as city councilman in San Antonio, we had to decide on that year's street maintenance budget. And I'll never forget that at a neighborhood meeting, a middle-aged woman came up to me to tell me about her elderly mother. You see, she said that her mother had diabetes, and that because of that, her mother's doctor had asked her to exercise. And her mother said that she wanted to walk in her neighborhood, but there were no sidewalks. And also, there were too many loose dogs around that made it dangerous. Does some of this sound familiar to y'all? That woman's story has always stuck with me, and I remember it to this day, and I'm grateful to her because it helped me to see very early on as a policymaker that all of our work is connected. Health, infrastructure, public safety, overall quality of life. That's the idea behind our partnership with the City of Pittsburgh and the local housing authority through our Choice Neighborhoods initiative. Their community revitalization plan was completely resident-informed and community-led, and it's brought together city leaders, planners, and a number of folks from the nonprofit and private sectors. They're creating a street grid, a new street grid, and connecting those streets to main thoroughfares. They're also building a state-of-the-art bus transit center to better connect residents of the surrounding neighborhoods to Pittsburgh's downtown. And they're developing new parks and new green infrastructure. In fact, the residents' vision is to make their community a, quote, 21st century green neighborhood that works. Now, I don't know which is more exciting, the vision statement or that everyday folks are now talking about things like bioswales and stormwater runoff. But Pittsburgh is a great example that when planning is done right, it benefits the people, it benefits their pocketbooks, and it benefits our planet as well. And finally, the third step that communities must take to succeed in this century of cities is to prepare their residents, especially their youth, to compete in the global economy. They have to cultivate brainpower and match that brainpower to economic opportunity. Creating great public schools is, of course, an important step, but it's not the only step. That's because for so many children in low-income neighborhoods, opportunities for learning outside the classroom, which we know is also important for long-term success, just aren't available. And that's why HUD is investing in educational opportunity for children in a number of communities, including in the Yesler neighborhood right here in the great city of Seattle. Working with the Gates Foundation, the local housing authority, and the school board, we've created an after-school tutoring program for 400 students. And the results so far are pretty impressive. Between 2011 and 2013, for instance, science scores for fifth graders in the program rose from 15% who met the state standard when the program started to nearly 60% who are meeting that state standard today. And we also know, though, that in this 21st century global economy, even a great K through 12 education just isn't enough to compete. So HUD is connecting more public housing residents to continuing education and to job training opportunities, including through initiatives like Jobs Plus, which is designed to help residents boost their skills and their earnings. As President Obama has said, in this, the richest, most powerful nation in the world, your zip code, where you're born, who your parents are, should never determine how far you can go in life. And a challenge in this 21st century is to make sure that America remains the undisputed land of opportunity around the world. And our team at HUD is determined to help more Americans secure a quality education and good skills training so that they can achieve their dreams no matter where they live. And of course, so much of the work that I've just described depends on the insight, the vision, the skill, the integrity, and the commitment of planners, of you. And HUD wants to expand our support for good planning so that we can accomplish even more together. That's why President Obama has proposed $300 million for something called our Local Housing Policy Grants Initiative, so that we can help policymakers formulate smarter regulations and bring more stakeholders to the table in order to expand housing in their own communities and increase affordability during what is, in many communities in the United States today, an affordable housing crisis. It would also help to create a learning community for grantees so that we can take those best practices that have worked in one or two or a dozen communities and ensure that they can help other communities around the nation as well. Now, I know that many of y'all have been at this for a long time. You have the opportunity to serve in local government, which in this 21st century is where things get done, where people of different backgrounds and perspectives roll up their sleeves regardless of partisanship or ideology in the spirit of creating a community, and they get to work. And your privilege is that you help for them to see the community interest and the future more clearly. As you do that, I know that I don't have to remind you that cities are complex beings. Poets and novelists throughout history have written about the city, often in one of two ways. Some have cast the city as a place of new beginnings, of excitement, a place where the sun is always rising and the air is fresh with opportunity, a place where anything is possible. To them, the city is kind of like dawn. Others have written about it as a foreboding place, a jungle, or a mystery, with an element of danger and of romance. A place where anything might happen, the city like dusk, Our challenge in this 21st century is to create great cities that are both of those things, well, minus the danger. Places of enormous opportunity for individuals willing to work hard and with a vibrancy and a character that you just can't find anywhere else. Places that are unique and unforgettable even. And that is the charge of your calling and the privilege and the beauty of your work. Your fellow Americans are grateful for the passion and the expertise and the long hours that you bring to your role every day. And your cities are lucky to have you. You make them stronger, more resilient, and more prosperous. And most of all, you make a difference. With your help, may this century of cities be a century of dreams realized in your own communities, in our nation, and around the world. Thank you very much. Thank you.